Alright, what is going on today, guys, and welcome to my Explore channel. Today we're exploring the Bodie ghost town. I'm going to tell you some history about it and some of the people that live there. So if you could go ahead and hit that like button, or else YouTube won't share this information with anybody. And if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button so you can follow along on all of my future adventures. But with that stuff out of the way, let's get into the video. So Bodie was named after miner William Bodie after he found placer gold in late 1859. He stayed to face the winter but froze to death in a blizzard that December. In the summer of 1861, an important discovery of lode gold was made on ground, which later became the camp's largest producer, and for the next 4 years, Bodie experienced a mild boom and shared in excitement over by a nearby town called Aurora. Mining began to fizzle out until 1874 a rich vein was found. And after a couple of rich strikes in 1877, a furious rush began. And intensifying in 1878, stocks swiftly rose in price and Bodie activity pumped new life into the San Francisco Exchange. Locations were made for miles around and Bodie grew in every direction. During the severe winter of 1878 to 1879, many people died of exposure and disease. There was little employment and scarcity of housing and food, and the only pastime was in the saloons. But thousands of eager people came in the spring of 1879, and great quantities of supplies and material were teamed in. The district was caught up in a delirium of excitement. Additional mines were opened, new mills built, new structures erected, and the camp was freely spending gold coins. With government consisting of only a few sheriffs and a justice of the peace, excess of every kind abounded, and the bad man from Bodie quickly became a legend throughout the West. Fights were alarmingly frequent, and shootings by quick-draw artists were numerous. By the end of 1879, 10,000 people had flocked in, and with the presence of many Chinese and Mexicans, the camp was truly cosmopolitan. In 1881, a rapid decline had set in. The mines were abandoned except for the proven few, and the lawless left to practice their trades in the more active localities. The stock market went to pieces, and by 1883, only 500 people were in the camp, which was kept alive by 4 or 5 mines. In 1918, the railroad stopped running and was scrapped. A fire destroyed most of Bodie in 1932, but small-scale mining continued until the beginning of World War II. In 1962, California State Park System undertook the protection of Bodie Ghost Town, and in September 1964, the Bodie State Historical Park was dedicated. Bodie is one of the most famous ghost towns in the country. Here's a picture of U2 taking a photo for their album cover in the 80s. And I wonder what's up with this strange gravestone up here. What's going on today, explorers? Today we're in a ghost town you've probably been to called Bodie. This is a California state park, and they've preserved this town to show you kind of what life was like back in the gold mining days. So we got a little map here, and we're gonna explore all these buildings and kind of tell a little bit of stories about them. Okay, this first house was the McDonald and later the Dolan House. Donald and his son Frank McDonald are listed as miners on the 1920 census. Donald's wife Mary was one of Bodie's postmistresses. And then schoolteacher Alice Dolan, daughter of Sheriff James Dolan, lived here briefly from 1935 to 1937. Her father was killed in a shootout near Mono Lake in 1915. This is the D.V. Kane House, built in 1873, and the Kanes sold Bodie to the California State Parks in 1962. This is the Methodist Church that was built in 1882. It is Bodie's only church still standing. The Catholic Church, also built in 1882, burned in the 1928 fire. And this is a bullet shell casing I found on the ground. And this is the red barn, typical of the large barns once used throughout Bodie. And you can still see some red paint even. And this is the Miller House. Tom Miller, born in Canada, worked as a teamster for the Bodie Railway and Lumber Company at Mono Mills. near Mono Lake. In 1900, Miller and his wife Jessie lived here with their 2 children. And this is the James S. Kane house. James arrived in Bodie at the age of 25 in 1879, right about the beginning of the gold rush. He had just married Martha Delilah Wells of Genoa, Nevada. Kane entered the lumber business and put barges in a steam shop in Mono Lake to transport wood. In 1888, he became a banker and kept the Bodie Bank open until 1932. In 1915, he acquired the Standard Company mining properties through court action and soon became the principal property owner in town. He always believed Bodie's mines would continue to prosper again. And this is the Boon store and warehouse. This store, built in 1879, was one of the several general stores in town. It was owned by Harvey Boon, a distant cousin of Daniel Boon, and partnered to James W. Wright. Note the food and gas cans used as siding along the south wall. Boon was active in the community, serving as a county supervisor, school trustee, and Bodie Water Company resident. And this building is the Swayze Hotel, owned by Horace F. Swayze. He was a Nevada rancher who bought this 2-story hotel in 1894. It also housed a clothing store and a casino in later years. And this is some of the original wallpaper. This is one of 2 mortuaries remaining at Bodie. This building, with the caskets still inside, may have been moved here in Bodie's later years, probably after 1888. And these 2 buildings are the Independent Order of Oddfellows building and the Deschambault Hotel. The IOOF Lodge number 279, as it was known, was one of Bodie's many fraternal societies. The lodge used the upper floor. The first floor was used by Henry Ward, who built the building in 1880 to house his undertaking and furniture business. It was later occupied by Bodie Athletic Club. The post office moved here in 1879. The upstairs served as Grandma Johnson's rooming house. Later, the buildings became a Deschambault Hotel. In Bodie's final years in town, it was a bar and a cafe. And these stores were the Wheaton and Lurs store, owned by George H. Wheaton and Nicholas C. Lurs. They built the store here in the early 1880s. The sign on the facade displayed their names, and was later covered up with a new sign, Bodie Store, after Lurs died. The overlapping signs, revealed after the building's white paint faded, appeared to read Wheaton and Hollis, but there was never anyone named Hollis associated with it. J. S. Kane bought the store in 1898. According to his daughter-in-law, Ella Kane, the building had been a U.S. land office from 1885 to 1886, when her father, Michael J. Cody, worked there after his appointment by President Cleveland. In 1910, it became offices for the hydroelectric company that transmitted electricity to the town. From Lundy Canyon, after the Clinton West Company arrived in the late 1920s, the building became a hotel boarding house. Josie Pearl, known for her cooking, was hired. As she had in other mining camps, she continued mining on the side. And this was Bodie's Firehouse. Their 2 major fires were in 1892 and 1932. And this is the Joel House. Lottie married Eli Joel in Nevada before moving to Bodie in 1883. The couple's successful mining investments allowed them to purchase houses and several saloons. Lottie took up painting in Bodie. One of her paintings hangs in the Miners' Union Hall. From 1932 to 1942, the post office was located here. And this is Sam Leon's Bar and Joe Hanner's Barber Shop. The bar was opened in 1937 by Sam Leon after losing his U.S. hotel in 1932 fire. This building was previously a restaurant operated by the Heiss family. Leon was born in China in 1879. He also ran cafes and boarding houses in Bodie. The adjoining barber shop was owned by Joe Hanner, the last barber to work in Bodie. And this building is the schoolhouse, originally the Bon Ton Lodging House. This became the school after the first school was allegedly burned down by an early-day juvenile delinquent. In 1879 to 1880, the school saw its highest enrollment of 615 students. It closed in 1942. Okay, so here we have a few different houses, and I'm just going to kind of read you all of these stories back to back. So we have the Gregory House. Nathan Gregory operated a cattle ranch between Bodie and Aurora. He and his wife Catherine appear in the 1900 census with their 4 children. Their youngest son Spencer became a mining engineer and was one of Bodie's last residents. The McMillan House. A.E. McMillan was the secretary of the Bodie Miners Union in 1885. His son Dan, who had only one arm, was manager of the Bodie baseball team in the early 1900s. The Miller Boarding House. Minnesota native Annie Curie Miller moved to Bodie in the boom years with her miner husband William. She first ran the Occidental Hotel, then later opened this boarding house to provide rooms and meals for bachelor miners. She also owned the rooming house across the street. The Conway House. Thomas Robert Conway, born in Canada in 1875, lived here with his wife Anne and 3 children. The family lived first in the Todd House across the street. Bob was one of Bodie's last residents. In the boom years, Bob's cousins, John and Patrick Conway, ran freight wagons between Bodie and Carson City, Nevada. John also worked as a blacksmith. And this is the Standard Mine. It was first known as the Bunker Hill, and then the Bullion Mine. This was Bodie's Masonic Hall and Chinese Laundry. Lodge number 252, established in 1878. Membership peaked at 93 in 1882. And this is all that remains of the Bodie Bank after the 1932 fire. James S. Kane bought the bank, founded by E.L. Benedict in 1890. Despite Bodie's Wild West reputation, its bank was never robbed. A nighttime burglary on September 1st, 1916, however, yielded $2,000 in cash, some bullion, and other valuables. This town jail looks small in proportion to the tales of lawlessness during Bodie's boom years. From 1878 to 1881, the jail was responsibility of Constable John Kurgan. In an infamous 1881 incident, which resulted in Kurgan's temporary demotion, vigilantes took accused murderer Joseph DeRoche from the jail and hanged him. And honestly, guys, there's a tons more cool stories and cool characters about all the buildings that are still standing here at Bodie Ghost Town. But I think that's where I'm gonna end today's video. I'll probably come back and revisit this. There's still tons more history and stories to be told here. And I wonder what's up with this strange gravestone up here.